Hey, Lorraine. Hi, everyone. Hi, Tina. Okay, so we're just getting set up so we can actually dive into a really, really, really exciting conversation. Tina, how are you feeling?
I'm wonderful, thank you. How about you?
Good. I'm
You look
feeling good.
today.
What'd you say?
I haven't seen you with that lipstick. You look wonderful.
It's true. It's true. We met in a very rough condition for me. So, yeah, very true. All right. So, we've got 2 minutes before we're going to start. And we just want to encourage everybody to go and invite your friends, make sure everyone knows that this is happening. We are going to get into the polarities of the masculine and the feminine. And so this is such a unique conversation for us to be having. Let's see who else is here. Oh, April, hi, love. Um, yes. And Tina, you can scroll through as well and see if you know any names that are there. We are minutes before we go
Some
live. I'm just going to shoot.
beautiful friends are here.
Amazing. Love that. Um, Let me pull up our documents. I'm going to shoot over one last message. All right, again, so it is the top of the hour, and we're just going to start in about 1 more minute.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get that final broadcast out so we can get as many people here on the line as possible. You know, it's something when you hear things live versus when you listen to a recording, and we
Right.
also want to make sure that as many people as possible can have their questions answered real time. So, here we go.
I'm grateful for you doing all the setup, the technical.
Oh, my pleasure. All right, Tina, you ready?
Sure, let's go.
Okay, let's get this going. So, hi everyone. It's so good to see so many people who've already joined and joined on time. We want to be as respectful as possible of your time. But this is such an exciting conversation. I'm just so grateful that we're able to have it, Tina. And so, I guess before we even jump in, because today we're going to be talking about something really unique and something that not everyone really knows about, which is how do we start to explore our polarities, our masculine and our feminine polarities. And maybe before I say anything else, like Tina, anything you want to chime in just before we really
Well,
start?
I think there's a lot to dive into related, I think, to our personal stories as well. I have come to Tantra in my own path of reconnecting with my body, and therefore also reconnecting with the feminine side, which I didn't know at the point in time when I was on that quest. But the tantric teachings, they have given me so much language basically to describe and reconnect to things I've been intuitively knowing, and to my inner essence, and all these little aspects of my psyche that yeah, are based on the masculine and the feminine energies. And I'm very excited to share that and talk about it with you.
Oh, thank you so much. So, as everyone is joining, we really want to see where people are coming from. So, feel free to drop like the city or the country that you're in, just so we can start to see where in the world everyone is. So, we want to also let you know that the chat box is open. If you have a question, make sure you put your question into the thing that looks like a comment box with a question mark. So make sure that you put your questions there, and we will be excited to answer those towards the end of our discussion. Again, for those who are just coming on, we're going to be talking about this concept of the masculine and the feminine. And we want to explain how you can use these energies and how they lead to personal growth and development, but also how do they lead to a more balanced, how do they lead to you having more balanced relationships? So, for those who don't know me, my name is Erica Daniel. I am an intimacy coach. I love to just work with people who are looking to deepen their connections with themselves and be able to show up in the world more authentically as they are. My belief is the more we're able to connect to our true essence, our true being, the more we're able to show grace and love to other people in the world, especially with in a romantic sense. And so it's all about connecting first to yourself and then allowing that expression to show up in how you connect with others in the world. So that's who I am, and that's a little bit of the work that I do. I had the pleasure of meeting Tina at a tantric massage training earlier this year in Bali. And Tina, I'm going to throw the ball to you so that you can introduce yourself to everyone as well.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think it has been quite a journey this past year, and I'm really happy to have met you in Bali earlier this year. I have been on a 4-month sabbatical in this life transition that I've been in, and currently on a mission to bring the tantric teachings in a very modern and relatable way to as many people as possible. And I really like what you said about being the most authentic self so we can spread the love to others. And this is also what I found within my work, and bringing the love especially to those in a romantic relationship. So I love to work with couples and individuals, and I've been on this tantric journey now for a couple of years, but it's not fully my background. I've been also in business operations and management before, being very much in my masculine energy my whole life, and not having really figured out the balancing side of things, like being in the harmony of those two polarities that we'll talk about today.
Mm-hmm.
And this is how I basically found my mission, also always having been very interested in relationships, in sexuality, and just starting to start this work. And I'm excited to be here. I think that's the shortest introduction I can give you right now without
I'll
too
take
much
it.
detail.
I'll take it. And so some of you may even be wondering, like, well, what are these polarities? What does this even mean? What is this masculine and feminine thing? Like, I'm a man. I know I'm masculine. I don't think I need to know anything about the feminine or the other side of that. But the truth is, there's so much more there that we just don't talk about. And we can actually start to see these things in our characteristics. We can see it in how we work and engage with people, on the things that we have to do in our day to day or in our everyday lives. So if you're constantly having to make decisions for yourself, if you're constantly having to take charge of a situation. You may be a mom, a new mom, or a mom of toddlers, but that means you're operating mostly in your masculine energy. So Tina, we're just going to jump right in. And the first question that I have for you, and before I even start with the questions, another thing I want to say to everybody who is listening. Yes, Tina just explained that she has been on a journey as it means for her to become a tantra facilitator. And I myself, I am not as deep in that journey as she is. Tantra is something I'm more so new to and something I am exploring and diving deeper into for my practice. So if you don't know anything about Tantra, you don't need to. Today isn't a Tantra class. Today is literally just a discussion on what it means to be in our masculine and feminine energies and how we can actually start to practice being balanced, how we start to identify when those energies are coming through. So if we use any language that you're not sure what that means, please drop it in the comments or drop it in that question box so that we can make sure to come back and actually answer that, because we don't want anyone to leave today being confused. We really want everyone to be able to leave and say, I learned something and I have something that I can implement. And so, Tina, my first question for you is how would you define the masculine and feminine? Like, let's just start there. Like, what does it mean? Why is it important to recognize it? And do they really both exist inside of us?
Yeah. So that's the most important question, I think, to give a basic understanding for this talk. And what I want to mention firstly, before explaining what these two represent, is that as you said, and I can confirm that they do exist in all of us. So the masculine and feminine energies and qualities, they're really not dependent on any biological gender. They're merely like complementary polarities inside of us that are kind of helping us navigate through life in many ways. And all of us have these two sides. And if you look at nature, if you look at anything in the world, basically, there is always these polarities that we have. It's not only the masculine and the feminine, it's also the light and the darkness, the most common example, right? We wouldn't know what light is if we wouldn't have the darkness. And at the same time, we need both. So we need to sleep, we need to rest, and there's always this duality of opposites that are actually not to be separated, but rather integrated. So that's why also it's so important to have this conversation, to understand that they do both exist inside of us, and they should have a place in our lives and in our beings. I think the common, or the best way to start explaining what they two mean is referring to the yin and yang symbol, which I think many of you
Yeah.
can relate to. And it's a beautiful symbolic monument of this masculine and feminine polarities that I will keep coming back to in this conversation. Because it's really showing us this concept of doing versus being, and doing being this very proactive side, outgoing side, that's the masculine representation, and the being side, which is the opposite, which we need, is the feminine polarity, which is the receiving, the more passive. And what else the masculine represents, to just give a few keywords on like both sides, I think that everybody can relate to. So the masculine energies inside of us, they're the ones being mostly rewarded in our society as well. They're these very action driven, very structured, kind of container like characteristics and energies that we need in order to function, to do planning, to have all these tasks in our life, and have discipline. And this is the masculine energy that we need for. And then there is the feminine side, the being side, which is so beautifully giving us kind of the aspect of the body, unlike the masculine is more being in the mind, and the feminine is being much more in the body, being very connected to our emotions, allowing this emotional fluidity in a very healthy way. Being kind of the aliveness to the structure, being the receptivity, like having intuition and creativity. That's what the feminine, being connected to the feminine energy brings out inside of us.
Yes, lovely. And in case you're like, whoa, 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 that was so fast. There were so many good nuggets there. Don't worry. We know that repetition is what helps you to retain information. So you're going to hear us saying a lot of these same things over and over again so that you really get it and understand
Yeah,
it. Yeah.
good point.
Yes, yes, yes. So, I guess one thing I'll share is how these things show up in our everyday lives. One thing you said was the masculine energy is really like the pensive part, right? It's where we're thinking about things, where we're coming up with solutions. And so let's just look at practical examples. If you are in a managerial role, in an office setting, you have to make so many decisions, and some of those decisions may be spare of the moment type of decisions.
Mm-hmm.
That means that when that is happening in that moment, you're in your masculine energy. Right now, let's move out of the corporate space and let's move into the relational space. If you feel that you're always having to take care of the home, make sure that you have an atmosphere or an environment that is welcoming for a partner to come into. And that means that it could be clean, or you're burning incense or candles or whatever, trying to ensure that you have this very like nurturing and open space for people to feel comfortable in. You're likely in your feminine side. You're likely in your feminine energy. And so these are just some of the ways that you can start to say, oh gosh, I do that in my everyday life. I'm probably more so in my feminine energy right now.
Mm.
Another thing is, let's say you love community service, you love to give back, and it's a really important part of who you are. You're likely in your feminine energy in that moment.
Mm.
And if you feel like nobody should ever ask you, or maybe you're the best party planner ever because you know how to make a decision, make a list, stick to it. You're not deviating from the budget. You got this. You're probably in your masculine energy. So
Mm.
those are just some like real life examples of how you can start to decipher, like, am I in my masculine? Am I in my
Mm.
feminine? And that can help you just really think about what's happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tina, anything you want to share there?
Yeah, I would love to jump in. I like that you give very specific examples of at which points in our life we're using different energies. But I also believe that in all of these examples that you've mentioned, we're still moving on a spectrum of the masculine and the feminine, right? Like we have access at all times and in all life circumstances. We have actually access to these two energies. And I think there is the difference of saying, like, what's our natural blueprint that we are born with? Like, if we're born in a female body, female hormone system, are we born in a male body, for example, male hormone system? That gives us a more natural blueprint. Being inclined to a certain kind of energy can be, not must be. And then there is difference of moving on the spectrum and being very connected to both and implement actually even work and do and like in a managerial position, actually bringing in one of my own examples. That was my first wake up moment, actually, that the first feedback I've gotten from somebody that I managed at that time was that she said that she cannot relate to me, that I'm just like a machine, like I'm a robot. And it was a woman who told me that, right? And
Yeah.
that was the first moment where I realized, oh, like she's kind of right. And I had to very deeply reflect on myself, like, why is that? And realize also that the decision making has become much harder for me at that time, because I was constantly in my head. Actually, I was overthinking things. So I was like in this overdrive of the masculine energy while not having access to the feminine at all to balance it out, which actually makes the qualities and the healthy aspects of either side much more difficult to nurture and achieve, because a healthy connection to the feminine side will naturally attract the healthy masculine energies inside of us. So I do believe that in all of these situations that you've mentioned, we can and are very invited to actually move on this polarity and balance ourselves out, but also balance within a partnership, for example, in whatever is needed. So there is our unique blueprint, basically, we can decide on moving with. But yeah, just wanted to add that.
No, and it's a beautiful ad because it hopefully inspires everyone here to realize that, like, these aren't stagnant energies, right? You may not only always be in one. You may notice that you're shifting between the two. And ideally, where we want to see you get to is we want to see you get to balance, harmony. We want to see you in that space where you can start to recognize, oh, I've been in my masculine a little too long. I think I need to cater to my feminine now. And Tina, you hit on something that I think is so incredibly important. And it's one of the misconceptions, I think, that is out in the world on masculine, feminine energy. And before I dive into that, I'm just going to share a brief story. So earlier this year, I was in Uganda and I did an event there called Who's Next? And these Who's Next events that I do, they're really like, what'd you say? Like, they're homegrown conversations. So they're living room conversations with a small crowd hosted by one person in their home. In this case, I was the host in Uganda. And the conversation was around feminine and flirty. And it was, I asked the ladies who attended, like, how are you tuning into your feminine energy? And the responses really tailored to the socialization of how a woman was to show up in the world. It wasn't actually tending to feminine energy. And so I'm saying that because sometimes we think, oh, someone's talking about masculine energy. They're talking about the socialization of what it means to be a man in this world, what it means to show up often we hear things like as the provider, as the, one leading the household, as the decision maker, as the one with more of an iron fist sort of thing. And that if you're feminine, it means you're showing too many female-like qualities. It means you're too soft. It means that you're too emotional. And it's like, well, wait a minute. No, that's not what we're saying. We're not talking about this gender socialization that is infiltrating the world, which is already so flawed. We're not talking about that at all. We're talking about, and this is what Tina kept saying, we're talking about these two polarities that exist already naturally inside of us, right? And so when I had this conversation with these women in Uganda, I was thinking they're going to talk about how to get more creative, how to, maybe there's a hobby that they're really into and they want to spend more time doing that hobby and they just haven't made time for it. And there was no conversation on that at all. So when I started to ask them, well, how do you show up at work or how do you show up at home? All of them were in their masculine. And when I started to say, like, just to use the words that you were even using to explain the feminine, your creativity, your intuition, that sort of thing, then they were like, oh, no, I don't make time for that anymore. I really wish I could do more of this. And one person said, oh, I really like, I hope she doesn't mind I share this, but she said she really enjoys taking like nude photos. Like she loves being a muse for photographers because she really enjoys her form. And no, it's not perfect, but like to see how they play with it on the camera is really inspiring for her. And it was like, wow, what a beautiful way to be in your feminine energy. And then they started to get it. So I really want to hone in on the fact that like your gender socialization is not what we're talking about here. That is not your masculine and feminine energy.
Yeah.
So like for those who are thinking, oh, how do I become, more masculine or how do I become more of a lady? Like, no, that's not the conversation that's happening here.
Yeah, I would like to pick up on a few things that you said. Even it's interesting for me in the way that you frame and you tell this story, right? Or reframe like how these women perceive like the masculine and the feminine. And there was that you were describing the masculine qualities very neutral, and then you came to the feminine. You were like too soft, too emotional, too this, too that. And it's so many times that we see, or that in our society, the feminine qualities, which are qualities as well, it's not one better than the other, that these qualities are simply seen as the weaker one. And that's something that I'm very inspired to sharing as well, because it's not about that. It's like really about acknowledging that both of them are beautiful and different. Yeah. And I also don't want to say like just being too much in my masculine, which I used to say in the beginning is like something bad. There's nothing wrong about being like goal oriented and driven and hardworking and all of these things. There's nothing wrong about it. It's only wrong as soon as we use either side to cover up something else. So there is then we come into this unhealthy traits or unhealthy balances that I would also like to touch upon. But there was something else I wanted to say. Yeah, that I think like in the work that I do and I feel so inspired to sharing also the awareness of these two polarities, because I feel like sometimes we just need permission to embody like who or our true essence, and especially on the feminine qualities. This is something simply due to societal upbringing and aspects has been a little shamed upon. And I would like to inspire to get this permission of like, it's actually beautiful to be soft. Like I want to be taken care of, I want to receive, like I feel good in that, I am radiant, I am nurturing, I am caring, I enjoy that, it's not like that I have to do things, but I actually feel held in all my vastness, because in truth, like the feminine, it's not too much or too of something, it's big as the masculine, right? Like it's huge.
Yes.
It's so like wow, and I think masculine can hold that.
And just to like chime in real quickly, Tina, before you continue, is And it's something we all need and
Yeah,
want and desire, right? It's like we
exactly.
all want to feel cared for. We all want to feel like loved and held and nurtured. And so,
Yeah.
as much as we want to receive it, I think we also need to remember, and this is the relationship aspect of it, that sometimes that means we have to give it too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
we can't only always be on the receiving side of this. Sometimes we have to learn how to, empathize and also be on the giving side of those same qualities.
Yeah, exactly. And I think especially in the relationship dynamic that you're mentioning, it's also like there are all these love languages which like are like similar or like all contribute to understanding your dynamics and the polarities in the relationship better in your communication, in the way you give and receive love.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a beautiful, like there are simply these feminine, masculine qualities in the ways that they are more natural or more assigned to the masculine way of showing love and giving love, which is by providing stability, for example, by
Right.
providing protection. So this is and having a purpose of like creating something, building something, like that's the masculine purpose. That's yeah, the basically core essence. And in the feminine essence there is like the more the caretaking, right? Like our positive
Yes.
polarity of our body even is the heart, like we give out through the heart and we share that love with people. We like to create nurturing environments. We love to take care and bring this aliveness and vibrancy into other people's lives. And that means that of course it's also important for men or those that are more in a natural blueprint of the masculine to be connected to the feminine in order to receive that, even in order to attune to the feminine in
Mm-hmm.
the ways that they like to express. And so the masculine is also able to receive that kind of love for
Yeah.
themselves.
And I just want to slow us down a little bit because, a lot of people, again, this may be their first time even diving into this conversation. And I really want to make sure everybody is able to really absorb the depth of like what Tina is sharing here. And so I just want to qualify a little bit around like, well, what are some of these feminine energies and maybe what are some of the natural characteristics you may have around them, just so this can really like resonate with you. And then I'm going to do the same for the masculine. So we're not just, you're not having to, you're not having to create for yourself what we mean when we're saying this, because we understand there's a lot of generalization out there. So we really want to make sure that like you have a full understanding of what this is. So feminine energy, there's some things around feminine energy that you should just know, and that's receptivity, maybe a little passive, intuitive, inward, like very inward. Some natural feminine qualities that we can see in people is like those that have that unconditional love, right? Like you can just feel that no matter what you do, they're going to be there for you. They're going to love you. They're just like, they're solid, they're rooted, and they're just full of a lot of grace. Um, they're there's a lot of stillness with them. They're not fast to move, fast to make decisions in this way. There's a lot of flow, a lot of radiance, tenderness, kindness, again, intuitive, creative. They feel, right? They're probably the empaths that are in your life. They're nurturing, understanding, and sensitive. Another word that's here is allowing, and I'm kind of chuckling to myself because my word for the year is acceptance and the allowing of things to happen as they're supposed to happen. Because I have been more so in my masculine than my feminine, and I knew this year, no, I need to just allow things to flow the way they naturally need to flow. I need to release control, release the desire to like have the power to change everything along the way.
Mm-hmm.
So those are some of the like feminine qualities. And maybe just hearing those, you're able to hear more so about like, is that me? Is that somebody else that I know? Like, and you may be thinking like, oh my gosh, that's my brother. Oh my goodness, that's my son, or that's my daughter, whatever. So like now you have some words to go along with it. On the masculine side, here we're thinking about projective, right? Very active, also giving, expansive, outward, right? So this one is like someone that's in the world, they're moving, they're movers and shakers, so to speak. And then some of the natural masculine qualities that you may see are inner strength, responsibility, courage, clarity, protection, assertiveness. They're very certain, right? They're very certain. Logical. They have a lot of stability. They're able to give clear direction. Um, and they have very good boundaries and they're very disciplined. And so think about, okay, on those two sides, like which one do you feel resonates more with you? Or are you balanced? Because again, we want to get to the place where we're seeing both of these things exist. So I just want to start people to start hearing words that go with both sides of the energy. So you can also start to feel like, oh, here and when I'm in a relationship or maybe the existing relationship you're in, you feel like you have to make all the decisions, you have to be the one taking the direction, like you have to have very clear boundaries with this partner of yours, and it's like if I don't do it, it's not going to get done. So maybe in this relationship you're in, you're operating more so from a masculine energy perspective, and maybe the partner you're with is the nurturing one. They're the more empathetic one. They're the very fluid one, right? More so relaxed, and they're operating in the feminine. So your relationship may actually be really balanced, even though you may be more in your masculine and they may be more in their feminine, but it's balanced in its nature of how you interact. Yeah.
Yeah. That was also a lot of information, by the way.
Sorry.
I guess no, very, very important ones. I guess what I would like to just add is that in these qualities that you've mentioned, there's also there is a healthy and an unhealthy representation and manifestation of those, right?
Yeah.
Because you said
Yes.
things like kind of the sense of leadership or assertiveness. You know, these things they can be perceived as very positive, but they can also manifest in quite an unhealthy way if somebody who is overly in their masculine or has an unhealthy perception of that is maybe too dominant, like is giving direction without considering others, you
Abusive.
know, opinions. Exactly, abusive. So and same so in the feminine side, there is also unhealthy manifestations of this nurturing, caring side, kind of, which can be quite manipulative, for example,
Yeah.
or emotionally very chaotic, not being very grounded. So that's something that I would just like to add in this understanding. And yeah, maybe we can also transition to the relationship part and how these polarities manifest in relationships, as you've already mentioned that, and that there is usually in any relationship you can see these polarities in two different people, but it depends very much in which intensity they show up in their healthy attributes, or whether they might bring out also some of the unhealthy sides, because there is in this work or in this understanding, before we get to the relationships, it is actually most important to do the work on ourselves first, so that we can show up in the relationship in a way that we can hold the other person, we can be this complementary aspect, and we actually feel comfortable with that. We don't chase like this ideal of these gender specifications in society that you mentioned, but we are actually very grounded in who we are and which side we bring out in each other.
Absolutely. And even more so into that on the relationship front, right? I'm gonna okay, so everyone's like, oh, if you know me, you're like, oh, here Erica goes again. But another thing with, as you just heard Tina talk about, like, yes, it's good to have these, to know these traits and characteristics, but also to know how they show up in the negative way. And what you may notice about some of those things, especially on the negative side, is it actually is directly linked to your attachment style. So when you're in relationship, you know, are you showing up as anxious, or yeah, are you showing up as an anxious attachment style, or are you showing up as avoidant attached? And what does that mean, Erica? What are these words? Like, what is anxious attachment What is avoidant attachment? And so, you know, anxious attachment is basically, one way I like to think of it is as like, if there's a body of water and you have waves that are constantly crashing on the sand, right? On the island, the water is just crashing, 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 right? A wave never stops hitting the land. It's just constantly going, constantly going, constantly going. So our anxious attached people are the ones that the moment something happens, it's like it has to be resolved. It has to be solved. We have to talk about it right now. What do you mean you don't want to talk about it right now? But no, 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 no. It's easy. I'm not getting complicated. There's no conflict here. I'm not angry, but we need to discuss it right now. No, no, no. You can't walk away. No, we can't do it later. We need to do it right now. Those are our anxious attached people. There's something in it for them that says, like, if we can't resolve this, you're going to walk away from me. You're going to leave me. And when we talk about, you know, going back to what you said, Tina, that's where we see like a lot of codependency. That's where we see a lot of neediness. And these are more so like how our energies show up in a wounded way, right? And that is just that person's attachment style. They may be balanced everywhere else, but the moment something happens, the moment something ignites, they got to get it done now, 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 now. Our avoidant attached people are the ones that need space and distance from it. If something's happening, they need time to be by themselves, to clear their thoughts, to process it on their own, to understand their own feelings around the situation. So those are the people that may need to leave the room or the house. They may need to go for a walk. They may need to go on a drive. And you know, it can often feel like those are the ones that are breaking connection, right? Like they're severing a connection in order to tend to whatever it is that they're processing. Those are the ones that are often the cues of not really being in loving connection with their partners. And it's not true at all. They're actually great lovers and they're great at connecting with people. But when we think about the negative side of how these energies show up, that's where we see kind of like the wounded masculine side, right? That's where we can feel like there can be a lot of like abuse of power because it's like, but you withdrew from me. Like you didn't come into connection with me. That's where we can feel there's a lot of aggression or even like dismissiveness. And, but really all it means is that person just needs time to process to be able to come back into the situation in a more balanced way. And so both attachment styles, it's not that anxious attachment, it means you have a wounded feminine, and it's not that avoidant attachment is that you have a wounded masculine. Yes, but you can also have the wounded side of both of those, like Tina was saying, because you can be anxiously attached and start to become very controlling, or you can start to feel very unstable because you're not emotionally regulating yourself. You can be avoidantly detached and yet you are playing the victim because you withdraw so much. It's like nobody ever cares for me. Nobody ever wants to know how I feel about the situation. And so really in relationships, you know, we want to stay in connection. And it can be really hard because we're human beings coming together, hoping that we can be accepted as we are. And that is so hard. It's so hard to allow your full self to be seen and judged every single day by the people that you're with, right?
Lifelong journey to
Yeah.
be so confident in being truly seen.
Yeah, and the vulnerability of it, right? Like having to open up vulnerably every single day and maybe to have like things from your past touched on that, oh gosh, now I have to tell you about that time where I fell off my bike and scraped my knee and that's why I don't like riding bikes anymore. So no, I really don't want to go on a bike ride right now. And this is why I'm crying because it's bringing back that time I fell. Like, and it may not seem like a big deal, but it is a big deal for that person who's in that place of having to receive. So relationships and our masculine and our feminine, it's constantly going to be there.
That's That's true. And in vulnerability lies connection, right? That's the most important part. And the vulnerability and of opening up, that's, I think, something that's happening on both sides of the energetic spectrum here.
Mm-hmm.
And I would like to really emphasize that these attachment styles, while they have, I think, a lot of influences, right? Like in our upbringing and what we have experienced in our in our homes as children, even later, anything that has contributed to that. Actually, understanding the polarity of masculine and feminine is a very good starting point in moving through these attachment styles and understanding oneself better. So like if you just address like either these attachment styles like individually and you try to move forward as a couple or understand each other better, then it can be much harder because it's so complex the way we are wired. I mean, humans are amazing. We're not just our physical body. We have all these like energetic imprints in our DNA. There's proven like information of like before generations, and everything we experience basically stays in our body. So there is the physical body, the energetic body, our mind. Like it's so incredibly complex, and
Yeah.
all we can do kind of, I feel like it's a little bit of a life path of understanding ourselves better and starting by these masculine and feminine polarities, which tie into so many aspects of us. And it's also a quite relatable, let's call it easy. I don't find a better word now, but it's a very good starting point without going in very complex psychological, trauma, histological, theories, because it just gives us immediate access to ourselves in saying like, true, actually I show up this way, or I show up that way, or this person inspires me because they have that, or maybe my partner triggers me because they are
Because, yeah.
representing something I actually want. So understanding these polarities and the polarities of life is such a good starting point for so many aspects of our relationship, and creating deeper connection with each other and being vulnerable, because we can actually see and explain and find the words for like, okay, I am reacting or behaving that way because I'm actually I'm not feeling very nurtured by you, or I feel like I have to take care of everything. I don't have space, to relax or to
Mhm.
lean on you, or I'm really needing, you to show up in a different way, but sometimes we don't have the language for it to really ask for it. Like even knowing how to ask for what we need, that's something we need to learn. That's an
It's
actual
hard.
skill to be acquired, like asking for what we need. And how can we ask for what we need? Only if we understand ourselves, only if we know like truly in our essence, like what is it that we are lacking, for example, what is it that we're longing for, and then we can ask somebody and articulate. But that's an important point to start in.
Yes, absolutely. And there's just so many things there, from even, like you said, just coexisting in relationship. When you start to move into the sexual aspect of relationships, like even from that place, right? Like, okay, now, yes, we've been in this romantic relationship, and now we're in this part of like fusion
Mm.
and bringing our energies together. And what does that even mean in our sexual union? Right?
Yeah.
Because maybe you show up differently in just the living space of the relationship, but in the sexual space, you start to see that you have different needs, you have different energy that's starting to come to the top. And, I've had clients in the past who face this. So I shared an example with you, Tina. I'm going to share it
Mm.
again here, where, I have a heterosexual couple, male, female. She has extremely high libido. He has a very low libido. He's okay having sex once a month. She needs to have sex multiple times a week. And so she's constantly asking, constantly wanting. And he's like, she's always just pulling at my pants. It's like she just wants me to be able to go now, now, now. And she's like, yes, because I have a need and I want it now. Just give it to me. And so in that way, she's in a more of a masculine energy state of like taking, wanting, needing. And he's like, no, but I just want to like cuddle. I just want to be held and hugged. So he needs more of his nurturing side. So his feminine energy is really showing up in that space, and her masculine energy is really showing up in that
Mm-hmm.
space. But it's out of balance. And so I was having to work with them on just like, okay, like you said, Tina, how do we start communicating our needs? How do we start communicating like what feels good, right, and appropriate, and what doesn't? And so, it's really a dance because there's no perfect science
Mm-hmm.
to any of this. And we may start in one direction, but guess what? There's so many things in life that also happen. There's so many life transitions, life events that are also happening that also causes our energies to shift.
Yeah.
And so,
Absolutely.
like you said, it's the awareness. Like, let's just be aware of what's happening to us. Let's just be aware of where we are so that we can be like, oh, that's why I'm feeling this way, because actually, I'm not really balanced right now. Or, oh, I've been really in my feminine. I've been really at home and cozy and like painting and doing all the fun and creative things that feel good to me. And I haven't done anything else. Oh, I feel that urge now that like I need to go and do something a little bit differently. And so that's all. We just like want to start bringing that realization in. So Tina, how do we do that? What are some of the exercises we can start to do to really like notice and start to have that awareness of just who we are, where we are, how we operate, and maybe even how to start exploring how to find balance?
Yeah. So I think there's some general things I can say to that, and some that are very specific to those. Also in the female body, but the female, like the feminine energy blueprint versus the masculine energetic blueprint. And one of the things I'd like to say generally, it ties a little bit into tantra, but it's like it defines this concept of harmony. And what tantra really means is to weave together opposites, where we come again into this into the yin and yang. So tantra is like these teachings are built on this concept of weaving into the opposites. So what's just very generally speaking for everybody a practice is to become aware, like in our daily lives, like really maybe just sit down at the end of the day and write down, okay, today I feel predominantly in my masculine energy because of this and that, or predominantly in my feminine. Just become aware for yourself for a couple of days, and then maybe if you're in a partnership, have this conversation with your partner and kind of like work on this, identify this together, like make this a little playful exercise and dynamic of just discovering yourself a little bit, like how are you moving through life, how are you moving through your day. And then the other thing is, that's more generally speaking, so in order to be connected to both sides, to find this harmony, we need to be like in our mind and our body, and ideally also have this connection to our spirit, like our soul calling. So these are the three things we want to align that all contribute to this inner balance. And the mind here representing more of the masculine, and the body more of the feminine. So inviting a little bit more sensuality into our life, into like inviting a little bit of the slowness into things, like, and the consciousness, like not just operating from a default mode, because like even reflecting, like how do you eat your food, like are you eating your food mindfully, how do you give a hug to somebody, how do you touch somebody, that's something we've learned in the training very much, like the difference between conscious and unconscious touch.
Yeah.
Like bring this mindfulness and this consciousness combined with your senses into your life, and just start by noticing a bit more and without judging, just investigate a little bit for yourself. So I think these are the important things to start with. Also, what I like to bring in a little bit of the balance, just because we are probably most of us like living in a world, at least from the audience here, living in the world where these masculine qualities are very rewarded, and we sometimes really forget just get into the being, and maybe even bringing a little bit of the sacredness. So we've talked now about the mind, like noticing, observing, writing down, like what do you notice in your day-to-day about your energies. Then the second point was connecting to your senses a little bit more, become aware of like your body moving, like connecting a little bit more to the slowness and the feeling. And the third part is like the spirit that I mentioned, and that includes a little bit of the bringing back the sacredness a little bit into things, like, and that connects to the slowness. If you want to be in harmony, you can only notice things and you can only feel things if you're a little bit in the stillness as well, if you're able to bring that in. So just slow down every now and then, like make sure that there is an atmosphere you feel safe in, if you have access to that, you know, and talk to your partner if you're in a relationship to create that space for reflection. So that's like very general, and I would love to mention specifically for those with the feminine body and feminine energetic blueprint, that you know, even biologically we are built in a very different way than the masculine, and the masculine is a very linear kind of energy, right? Like the testosterone level is always same, like kind of the whole month, you know, maybe with a few varieties, but it's quite kind of very linear. But the feminine moves in cycles, and there is our moon cycle, there is our menstruative cycle, as much as also energetically we move and we need the different things. Sometimes we need to go a bit more inward, sometimes we're a bit more outward. So just connecting to our cycle, which is like a whole big topic, I think, for a lot of women out there, because there's so much shame and misconception attached to that. But I think it's very, very fundamental and representative of this whole feminine polarity, that even for men, it's actually quite important to understand that there is the cycle of life, that there is the flow. That's why there is the flow. So understanding and connecting to these cycles, and maybe even for the male listeners here, like connecting with your partner if you have one in these cycles, like understanding that a little bit better, it already gives you access to the feminine side as well. So it gives you access to this balance. So that's really, really important.
Yeah, and you know, you really hit on something that a lot of people don't realize when it comes to the phases of the menstrual cycle, right? And how that does impact the energies that a woman is feeling. And so, for those who don't know, there are 4 phases of the menstrual cycle. So there is menstruation, there's the follicular phase, there's ovulation, and there's the luteal phase. And so Google it, educate yourselves, because it will help give you more insights into how, if you are with a female partner, how, depending on the stage that she's in, how her energy may be shifting. And so it's really fascinating, because it also allows us to be more connected with one another as well in those moments. And it's increased vulnerability again. There's that word again.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Vulnerability means connection.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, we are 10 minutes to the top of the hour, and I don't see any questions yet, but if anyone does have any questions, we want to encourage you to just drop it in the chat, or you can put it into the actual like question catcher that is there. But Tina, any final thoughts?
Yeah.
Or do
I've
you
just
have any questions?
I've just gone through my notes also, that I had some like must mentions that I think we've very much touched upon. But I would really like what I would really like people to take away from this is that we talked a lot about balance, and we mentioned that, but again, repetition is key, that balance is no stagnant point. It's not one point that we need to achieve and stay there. Balance is actually a constant movement and the ability to move. So that's for me very important to mention again. And that neither side of the masculine or the feminine qualities, no matter where we live, no matter which society we grew up in, like, is better than the other. We literally need both in order to be healthy and thriving and live in harmony, live connected to ourselves, be grounded. And we cannot be in constant like doing phase. We need to introduce the being side. And even like more broadly speaking, like we have so many light aspects. Yeah, exactly. we have so much light in us, but also we have shadows in us, and that's beautiful, right? So just mentioning that the positive, negative. No, there is no positive, negative. This is just a human invention in our language to describe like two things. But in fact, we just have opposites or even complementary opposites. We have polarities in almost everything. And you can really, as I also said, what like things you can start to be doing is also observe nature, observe like how the river, the water flows like in this container of like the stone, for example. That's already representation of the masculine and the feminine as well. Like you need the holding kind of, you need to feel safe to flow, or you need to have space to flow. And that also beautifully describes and manifests these two polarities. And create a healthy mind that is not in any form of overdrive of both sides. And also, like a little side note, like we speak about energies all the time. I think also maybe somebody cannot relate to that concept, like what is energy actually, why do we mention it, like what is it? And obviously in this context today we talked more about like the characteristics, or like parts of our psyche, ways of being, ways of communicating, like all these things. But there is also energy that according to the Chinese tradition does flow in our body, and there is like, we do have an energetic body. That's something that can be measured. And like being aware of this fact and connecting to our energy centers and understanding those, that actually the masculine and the feminine truly flows inside of us, that it's nothing we need to learn because we don't have it. It's something we all have already, and we have access to it at this point. We just need to learn how, and like acquire the tools for that. Which is something that I'm teaching in that way, and that I'm feeling very inspired to help people unlock these tools to get access to both sides, to get access to this balance and flow state.
Thank you for sharing that, Tina. Yes. And so there's a question that just came up in the chat. As a single woman, parent, and business owner, forced to live primarily in my masculine, how do you suggest I embrace my feminine without being passive?
That's a beautiful question. I like, you also mentioned the word passive. I just want to begin and also say, being passive, it's just our society that made the negative connotation to passive. It's actually receiving. And first of all, I would really like to invite you to see this receiving side of you as something beautiful and very healthy, that you, as a single woman, as somebody who obviously has all her things together, who knows direction, who knows how to take care of things, that the fact of being passive, in your words, or the fact of being receiving, is actually something beautiful. And that's something to begin with in the first place, that you connect to your healthy feminine side, that you allow that to coexist with your masculine side, that you allow that to live with you in a positive way, and that you design your life in a way that invites the feminine energy, that you find ways to slow down into the being, that you connect to your body. You just start with like very slow rituals of touching yourself, creating some incense, some like nice atmosphere, like you also mentioned, Erica. I think that's so important. That's already part of the feminine. So step by step, in very slow ways, and I'm sure you have a very busy life, but in very like small steps, in being active actually, in creating the space for yourself, you can already start connecting to that feminine energy, and invite then also a partner, like if that's your intention, or a masculine energy that wants to hold that knows that you want to receive also his masculine presence.
Great answer.
I hope that answers that question.
Yes, and I know who asked the question as well, so I'm going to add something more direct to her, because I know who it is, which is like, stay in your creative space, babe. Like, give yourself permission to be creative and to continue to create the things that feel good and matter for you without the pressure of having to execute, right? So like staying in that space of just like dreaming and like having, and like maybe writing it down, but not getting into the space of, and it has to be done by this day, by this time, and in this way. But like just staying in that, like, oh yeah, that would be great. Okay, yeah, maybe I can see myself doing that too. Like stay in that like space of dreaming.
of flowing a little bit.
Yes, thank
See,
you, Tina. That's the word, flowing.
yeah. And the power of manifestation, that's also a feminine one, actually. And I mean, it's very beautiful to have goals and to know kind of where you're going and set that for yourself. But on this path, allow yourself to express in the way that's most authentic to you. So if you find yourself creating out of a pressure because you feel like this is, expected of me, or this brings me money, or this, like anything, any like narratives you have for yourself while you're creating, then like start going inward a little bit and find a place of like, when and how do I create things that come just from my core of who I am, and what do I want to create from that place, without like the pressure of performing, or getting the validation from the outside world, just actually flowing in the process.
Yes, 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 yes. Okay. Well,
So
it is.
many beautiful things. I would love to hear from you, Erica, also. What's your main takeaway of this? And if there was something new that you've also learned, because you said, I mean, I feel like you're very deep in the matter as well. Maybe from a little like more rational view, because I'm like tantric teachings. Obviously, I approach things from maybe yeah, like the mystical and the feeling part, or the feminine side. But I really try to bring a lot of these rational aspects in, and I love to actually educate about the fact how our bodies work, how our like energetic system manifests in our organs, in our DNA, and in everything like that. But I would love to hear from you, like from your perspective, the way that you are coaching and what you've learned. Like, was there something new or something you would really like to add that people can relate to?
Yeah, so I just want to normalize again that like we all start on this journey of understanding from different places. And while I saw myself as being an energetic being, I'm not going to say that I was like so evolved on this conversation of like polarities of the masculine and feminine. And so it's like I had an understanding of it, but it was the most basic level understanding possible. So I just want to normalize that for anyone else who's like, I still kind of don't get it. Like, it's okay. Like, we all start somewhere. And now that you've heard something, you're able to like continue to grow your knowledge. So even today, I've learned so many things just from what you've been sharing, Tina. And I think one of my biggest takeaways is that in relationship, and I say this to the people that I coach all the time, in relationship, it's so key to allow your most authentic self to show up. Don't hide who you are. Don't try to, oh, this part of me is really bad. Like, I don't want them to know that I like eating spoons of garlic or like ketchup by itself. I don't know. Whatever quirkiness you have, sometimes we feel like, oh, they can't see that side of me just yet, or I don't feel comfortable if they know that I do this thing. And it's just like when you do that, you really shut off this really beautiful part of who you are, and that's the uniqueness of what makes you you. And when we become in the habit of doing that, we also start to stifle our natural energies. We start to because maybe you feel like, oh, I have to always, clean or cook or make sure I look a certain way before I meet this person. And maybe there are days that you just don't want to do any of that. And it's like, that's the beauty of just existing and allowing, is like knowing that like your fullness is welcomed. Like, you're worthy of showing up as you are in the space of navigating relationship with a partner or even being married. And so when it comes to relationships, I'm just noticing specifically that a lot of times energy gets stuck, or people end up mostly operating in one of their energies when really there's some holding back that's happening. They're not giving themselves this permission to exist. There's maybe this idea of, I have to do this, I have to show up this way. A lot of my male clients, I have to provide, I have to work so that I can provide, I have to, I can't disappoint my wife or my children. So I can't be at home. She wants me at home, but I can't be at home because I have to work. I have to make money. And it's like, but is that what you want in that way? And there's never been, like you said, that stillness, the slowness to like just be, to think, to move. It's just like, this is what's expected of me. This is what I know. This is what I've been taught. This is what culture says. And so, yeah, I think my takeaway is to really go back to the three things that you shared, Tina, around the body, the mind, and the spirit. To start writing down, how are you showing up? What are your traits that you're noticing that are popping up for you over the course of like 3 days, maybe? Like, oh, I woke up like this, and then I moved into this, and then I noticed some of this. Like, how are you taking notice of like what's showing up? And then the stillness, right? Just kind of like being present with the sensualness and like slowing down. And then what did you say? And then going into like that sacred space. So I think, yeah, your three takeaways are my takeaway for everyone as well, because what's happening in your home, what's happening in your mind, what's happening in your body. Like, there's no mind readers out there often in relationship, right? Like, our partners can't read our minds. They don't know what's going on with us. And so lean into being vulnerable. Lean into knowing that like your vulnerability can be accepted. And if you're not in a relationship that is safe enough for you to show that side of you, then let's talk. Let's talk about, how do we transition that, right? Like, what's holding you back? Is it the reality that maybe this isn't the right relationship, or is it other fears that are popping up for you? So yeah, those are some of my takeaways.
Beautiful. It again like brought up a lot of complexities that I could mention, but I'm mindful of the time. I love that. I'm very excited generally and genuinely about the dynamics of relationship and how our inner world like shows up in the connection with other people. It doesn't only just need to be the romantic relationship, but any form of relationship. And that also brings me back to this work of like working with ourselves first in order to show up differently, and that's how we can also inspire our partners. So if we're in a romantic relationship, or if there's something we notice in a connection with somebody, it's never, or it's most likely not going to work to just tell them like, do this, or you need to be more of that. We can only show up in a different way and inspire their energy to shift as well and to show up in a different way. So it's just really important to do the work on our own first. And also you've said like I just want one more topic. Like you said, like it's so much better to show up as your authentic selves and just like in all this fullness. However, I believe really that it's not so easy for us. Like I personally didn't know what that meant 2 years ago. I had no idea who I am outside of my work, for example. I had no idea who I am at my core, like beneath all this identity I built for myself that had so many aspects of it. So it's like it is a path, right? It's not something we can choose. It's like unlayering, becoming more comfortable with like showing more parts of ourselves. It's really a journey, and it can be supported by different practices in clearing these in clearing our energetic pathways, because whenever we are not showing up authentically or not expressing our truth, like we're energetically creating blockages that make it like that pile up over time. So our system is just already like so confused because there are all these pathways where our energy cannot move through because we haven't been like really authentic and really ourselves for such a long time. So it can really take it can take time to unwind. And I would like to encourage everyone to be patient with yourself also in this process, that it's not just a decision you can make. It really takes time and dedication and practice, and there will be moments where you can be authentic and then moments when not, because some trauma shows up, you don't feel safe, as you said. So just be gentle with yourself, and just use this as an exciting journey of self-discovery, truly.
And that's the word right there, isn't it? Journey.
Yes. Exactly.
Yeah. So Tina, before we sign off, we're a little bit over time, which is fine. But before we sign off, how can people connect with you? obviously through your Instagram, which is a great way to connect with
Yeah.
you. And I want to encourage anybody who wants to work more with Tina to also like shoot her a DM. Don't wait to do it. Do it now. If what you've heard her share is inspiring you and you want to learn more or go a little bit deeper, like shoot her a message now. But Tina, how else can people connect with
Yeah.
you?
Thank you. So I do have my website also linked on my Instagram profile, which will probably be easiest to find going from here. The website is called Lights of Tantra, and I picked that name specifically because I did want to shed light on the positive sides and not the misconceptions of Tantra, but also teach about the polarities in fact. So having the lights, but also the shadows. So it would be a pleasure if you just booked a 15 minutes intro call through my website, for example, to explore and discover what are the areas you'd like to work on, and then uniquely design a way of working together. Like, I'm very intuitive in that sense that there are packages and specific topics we can touch upon or that you might resonate right away with. But generally, I love to get in touch with people on a very individual level and yeah, get to know you first, and then we can see how we can connect further.
Awesome, 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 awesome. And if anybody out there has enjoyed anything that I've shared and you're interested in also working with me, you can also shoot me a DM. My website is also linked on my Instagram page, or you can go to my Intimacy Coaching with Erica Instagram page, which is _the_ Love Lab. You can also shoot me an email at info@intimacycoachingwitherica.com, and we can set up, same thing, a 15-minute consultation just to see, is this really a good fit? What are you trying to work towards? Am I capable? Am I able to actually work with you on helping to try to achieve that goal or not? So, Tina, thank you so, so, so much. We talked about doing this. Now we have done it.
Yes, it's
We
my
have done
first
it.
Instagram live.
Oh, wow.
It's a great start, and I really, really appreciate you and what you do and your enthusiasm. And you've been always radiating so much joy and so much wisdom from the first moment I met you. I'm very glad that we got to do this and learn from each other. And anyone who is listening, I can always recommend to reach out to Erica. You will be enriched either way.
Oh, thank you, Tina. And before everyone drops off, and if you're listening to the replay of this, if there is a topic that you heard us speak about and you would like us to do another live or maybe even a webinar to go a little bit deeper, send it to us. Drop us a DM so that we know there's interest in something else that we've said here, and we can see how we can make that possible. So I think Tina would agree with me. Like, we really, for me at least, let me say it for myself, and then Tina, you can say it for how it is for you. I just want people to have information. I want people to know that, like, there's other ways to exist out in the world, and there's other like avenue, like there's things that we can do, see and know to, again, just like really go inside and be our most expressive and beautiful selves, and knowing that that will impact all of our relationships. And so if there's something we can offer you, ask.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Anything. I'm also very driven by the fact of education and bringing awareness to the topics first, because like the topics of our authentic expression of the feminine, of the masculine, all these like ways of being, and our sexuality especially, and relationship topics, they have so many taboos attached to it. Like, there's so much that can be like holding you back from actually going that path, and maybe you need a little bit more help of unlocking that, of connecting to your deeper self. And I'm very inspired to bring awareness to that, and giving the tools. So it would be my pleasure to talk more about it.
Awesome. Well, thank you again,
Yeah.
Tina. This has been such a delight. I'm so
Thank
happy that
you.
we were able to do this. Thank you to everyone who participated, who is here. And yeah, just want to send everyone as many positive vibes to get through the rest of not just today, not just this week, but your life.
Exactly.
Um,
From the heart, from our feminine heart.
yes,
To
clear.
all
That's
of
what I'm
you.
in right now.
Yes.
All
Beautiful
right,
so much.
everyone.
It was my pleasure.
Same
Bye
here.
bye.
Bye.